Welcome to the How to Do Your 20s podcast. If you're in your 20s and not satisfied with the standard boring path most of society recommends, then this is the show for you. Whether you want to just relax and travel or get paid for what you love doing, the goal of this podcast is to give you real, practical, how-to information with none of the fluffy, feel-good BS you get with other podcasts. I'm your host, Travis Marziani, and I, like most 20-somethings, worked hard to get into a good college so I could work hard to get a good job, because that is what society said I should do. After I finally got that nice corporate job, I realized I was completely unsatisfied with my life, and I didn't want to spend the next 40 years in the prison that is 9-to-5 life. So I quit my job so I could start my own online business, travel the world, and live life under my own terms. I'm not special, and I definitely wasn't born rich. Growing up, my dad cleaned pools and my mom was a seamstress. But we happen to be living in the most exciting, opportunity-filled time in human history, and I, for one, am going to take advantage of it. If you haven't already, go to howtodoyour20s.com to get the bonus episode I just did about 14 ways you can invest in yourself. If you want real ROI on your money, spend it improving yourself. That's howtodoyour20s.com. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Hey guys, this is part 2 of the conversation I had with Elise, and this is one of my favorite episodes I've ever recorded. I will warn you, if you're an extremely sciencey type person, parts of this might kind of disturb you, but hopefully you can go listen to this with an open mind and realize, if nothing else, this is a lesson in theology of what other people's beliefs are, and this is kind of a more of an Eastern approach. A lot of this stuff sounds like it's a little off the deep end, but I think if you dig in deeper, you realize that it's not as crazy as it initially sounds. And Elise does an amazing job at explaining a lot of this stuff, not just from an Eastern point of view, but also a Western point of view. So in this part 2, we're going to talk about chakras, which I know right off the bat probably makes a lot of you guys out there cringe, but it shouldn't, because Elise is going to do a really good job. And at first, it will be a little bit more spiritual side of things she's talking about, but we'll dig into the science behind some of this stuff. And what I mean by the science behind it is there's different ways at looking at it. So listen to the episode. You'll see what I mean. If you haven't already listened to part 1, I recommend pausing this, listening to part 1 first. It'll ground you a little bit more in what we're talking about. But now, without any other further ado, here is part 2 of the 2-part episode I did with Elise. Let's dive into chakras. I think you have a really interesting way of explaining it that makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to let you take it away and talk about chakras.
Okay. So inside the body, obviously, we've spoken a little bit about the body as we see, as we touch, is not necessarily the only thing that exists. The body that we can see and that we can touch is the most basic, the most dense, the most, let's say, real level of our awareness. And this is what's called the Amamaya Kosha. So kosha means sheath or means body. So inside all the physical properties of the body, the skin, the bones, the teeth, the nails, the organs, the blood, these are all part of this facet. Now, we spoke a little bit about the nadi system and these prana, the life force that moves through these little tubes all through the body. Now, the same way that when you have a river that flows over a rock face, how as it flows over the rock face, it makes a waterfall. And as the waterfall kind of comes over an accumulation of earth, then it makes a little pool. And then the pool will overflow and then go down into the next spot, which will add another little pool. And then that pool will overflow and the process continues. The same thing happens in our own energetic bodies, in our own nadi system, in our own pranic or energetic system, with a word called chakras. So the word chakra actually is translated to mean a spinning wheel. So inside the human body, we have these little spinning wheels that run in and out through our entire systems. The most important of these spinning wheels, or chakras, run up along the spine, that run up along the most center line of the body. There are some arguments, there are some different researches that tell us maybe there are 9 chakras, maybe there are 10 chakras. There are a specific number of these spinning wheels that move along the very center line of the body. But these 7 of them are what's kind of used in common knowledge these days. And these 7 chakras, or 7 spinning wheels, start from the very base of the spine, the coccyx, the tailbone, and they move up to the crown of the head. Now, these spinning wheels are inside every single one of us, and much like the nadi system, they're indetectable with a microscope or any kind of lens that way. And unfortunately, because they're the process of life, you need to be alive to have your chakras working. You wouldn't be able to see them if you were to dissect the body, because that would mean the body wouldn't be living. So these 7 different areas within the body, these 7 different pulsations, they each have their own governing principle. So they all govern their own physical function, mental function, psychological function with mental function, and esoteric or energetic function. So these 7 chakras, or these 7 wheels, start, we can say, from the base of the spine, right at what's called the Muladhara, the root. So the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, this is said to be at the perineum, or the pelvic floor. And this is the energy center of awareness that governs our ability to feel safe and to feel secure. So this area in our body also governs all of the excretory functions of our body. So let's say defecating. So any ailments that we have going on in the intestinal system or in our digestive system, these can be attributed to blocks within what's called the Muladhara chakra. So the Muladhara chakra, again, has to do with our financial situation, how we feel about our financial situation. It has to do with our ability to feel safe, to feel that we have a place to live, that we have a community. All of our basic and our survival needs are sort of housed within this Muladhara chakra place. So within an individual, we know if we are either too far or too closed in our Muladhara chakra, we're going to have some sort of ailment there. So let's say, for example, we have a financial situation that's not so nice. Let's say we don't have so much money in the bank and we feel a lot of stress about that. Then we might start experiencing things like low back pain or hemorrhoids or constipation or diarrhea or anything going on in this level of the body. We might not feel that we can actually stand up straight. We feel that we don't really want to put our feet on the floor. We might even have a hard time doing that. And on the opposite side, let's say that we have a very big Muladhara chakra. So this would mean that we have a lot of safety, a lot of security, maybe a lot of money in the bank, maybe a lot of people around us, maybe a lot of food to eat, maybe a very big house to live in. So all of these areas are then represented in a big Muladhara chakra. So the problem is we don't want it to be too small or too big. We want to be balanced. Remember that yoga is all about balance. So if it's too small, then we're going to be living in a state of fear, a fear of not having enough. But if it's too big, then we're also going to be living in a state of fear, a fear of losing whatever it is that we have. So by practicing, even just doing the simple postures of yoga, we can learn how to bring this Muladhara chakra back into balance. We can learn how to feel at ease with our basic survival needs. Does this make sense?
It does. And I want to pause for a second. And something you said to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, where it really started to make sense was the posture. You can look at someone and their posture from a completely scientific point of view. You can see someone that has, their shoulders kind of shrugged forward. You can see that, okay, that person's insecure or this and that. And or someone maybe that their shoulders are really far back. They're almost too proud and it's quote unquote like too big of a chakra. And what I like about it is there's a lot of science behind this. There's the science of body language, body posture, and in fact, if you can hold yourself with your shoulders farther back, and there's a lot more examples I'll let you get into, you can actually become more confident from it. And my thought on it is yoga actually allows you to regain the natural body posture, the natural alignment, and kind of reach that middle balance ground.
That's exactly right. That is 100% right. And when it comes to the Muladhara chakra, so this root chakra, feeling that you can take care of yourself, let's just put it so simple that way, building leg strength. taking, being able to, there's a posture called chair posture where you put your feet together and you sit back almost as though you're sitting in a chair. For many people, this posture is very challenging. They don't have the strength in their legs. So even just to work on this pose is a way to be able to establish this belief inside of ourselves that we can take care of ourselves, that we can support ourselves. Make sense?
It does, yep.
Cool. Okay, so then the next chakra, so the next energy system, we can say, moving up the spine is called the Swadhisthana chakra. And this is in our sexual plexus. So this is housed within the sexual organs. So yes, clearly for men it's a little bit lower than it is for women. Women are a little bit higher. And this governs our appetites and our desires. So as you spoke about, the chakra can also be big or it can be small, and this is also represented in our body posture. So somebody who has a really big Swadhisthana chakra, these might be people that have very large appetites. And this could be appetites for food, it could be appetites for drugs or alcohol or sex or for shopping or for whatever it is, anything that sensual stimulation. So again, someone that has this really big energy center there is going to be going out into the world, and they're always going to be pushing themselves out to other people. And it's usually from an experience of wanting validation, wanting more, wanting to have that appetite fulfilled. Where someone who has a very small Swadhisthana chakra, so remember this is governing our appetites and desires, this energy center being small is going to be represented by someone who might be, let's say, afraid to have those appetites met. So somebody who doesn't eat, maybe someone who suffers from eating disorders, anorexia or bulimia, who doesn't deserve that they can have those appetites fulfilled. Or someone who abstains from drugs or from sex or from alcohol or whatever it is, that believes that they don't deserve to have these sort of passions in their life. And they might feel very frigid and very stale. And now you can see this represented in people on how they're able to move within their hips. Some people that have very open hips, so let's say they're very flexible. They might also be very flexible in their minds and in their life. And so this would be represented by a large Swadhisthana or a second chakra. And someone who has very tight hips, someone who can't really open up their hips, this is also stored there. Another thing that we can see within the Swadhisthana chakra is when we start to have blockages, let's say, so either too big or too small, is when we have more sexual-oriented diseases or misfunctions or dysfunctions, let's say. And so sexually transmitted diseases could be one of these things, or for women, so many have irregular pap smears. And we also have lots of gynecological issues or reproductive issues. Anyone that's had an abortion or a miscarriage, or anyone that's feeling guilty in that area, a lot of tensions, emotions, and traumas are stored there. So as we go through life, we're no longer able to open our hips. We're no longer have the ability to go into those deeper sort of poses. So when we start to open up the hips through the practice of yoga, we have to encounter a lot of those old beliefs, those old feelings, those old situations that might be still stuck there.
This is one of the chakras I talked about, the chest, and I don't remember the name for that chakra, but this is the other one that I feel like it's very apparent, and you can see it in someone that has a more open second chakra, and it's like that person, for me as a guy, obviously I notice it more in women. I'm like, that's a girl that's more open sexually, and same thing on the reverse side. I feel like it's one of the more apparent ones to see.
Oh, for sure. And I always say the example of when you go out to the bar, the person that's hitting on everybody that moves, that's an indication their second chakra is working very well, maybe too big. Mm-hmm. And the person that has the body language of being shut down, closed down, don't come talk to me, there's an indication of not being able to fulfill those kinds of things.
And with these, because you talked about the symptoms of, for instance, a really big or really small appetite, all that kind of stuff, can it be fixed outside of, obviously with yoga, that's one way to do it. Can it be fixed also? Let's say I have a small second chakra and I decide, all right, I'm not going to be so rigid. I'm going to start enjoying life a little bit more. Will that over time fix it, or how does that work?
Absolutely. It can. The beauty of the yoga practice is that it does it without you having to think about it. Mm. So by recognizing the ailments inside of ourselves and understanding what part it's attributed to, then we can also heal ourselves that way. So and remember, the practice of yoga isn't just the postures. The practice of yoga is self-inquiry. It's control, it's regulation. Remember, I spoke about those yamas and niyamas. So these are all ways that we can look into ourselves to see what needs to be fixed and how. Make sense?
It does. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So then from the second chakra, we move up to the third chakra. And the third chakra is called Manipura. And this is at the navel center. And this is how we assert ourselves in the world. You can say our confidence or our belief systems and how we express those belief systems. So someone with a really big Manipura third chakra, these are the people that are not afraid to let themselves be heard. These are the people, you could even say, they have a little bit of a ego. So these people, even on a very physical level, might have very strong bodies. They might be built, with a lot of muscles. They might have those really strong abs that almost act as a protection. And these people, they might be really good athletes. They might be really good at putting themselves into projects and really asserting themselves, like I said. But someone who has a very small Manipura chakra, these are the people that might be weak, that might be feeble, that might have a hard time standing up for themselves. They may not be so good in conflict or any kind of confrontation with other people. They might find themselves to be very sheepish and very shy. And on a physical level, they might not have a lot of muscle in their body. They might not be very strong. They might not be able to, let's say, move forward with courage or move forward with confidence. They'll always be sort of standing behind something to protect them. So for someone who has a very strong Manipura chakra, it's all about letting the ego calm down, letting the fire extinguish just a little bit. So from a yoga posture perspective, we can think deep twisting or belly breathing, relaxing the belly. And someone on the other side who has a very small Manipura chakra, you can think of building core strength. And we can even see this, again, you can look at the physical body and the research that's there. When we start exercising, and especially when we start using, let's say, weight training, or we start building muscle in our body, when we come to core strength, there is a direct correlation between someone who's building core strength and their confidence, their ability to stand up for themselves. Think if you get punched in the stomach. If you have a really strong abdomen, the punch in the stomach, you might be able to handle it a little bit better than someone who has absolutely no muscular strength in their abdomen. So this is also used in a psychological standpoint. So if you get, metaphorically punched in the stomach, someone gives you a really strong argument. If I'm sure about myself, if I'm very strong in my beliefs, then it's not going to affect me as much as if I don't have that strength, if I don't have that confidence.
Got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move up to the next chakra, which is called Anahata. And this is the one that you were speaking about. This is the heart center. And this is our ability to give and receive love. And just as you said, when someone sort of has this forward slumping down posture, their shoulders are closed, their chest is kind of hidden, this is an indication of a heart chakra that's closed, that someone who isn't maybe loving themselves, who isn't able to give or receive love easily and effortlessly. And these people, we all have friends and good family members that are suffering with this, as when you hug them, they won't really hug you back. They'll work on pushing their chest away from you. To touch their chest is almost a painful physical sensation. And then on the other side, you have someone whose chest is right out there, who's going around hugging everybody, telling everybody how much they love them and putting all of their emotions out there ad nauseum. And so that can be a little bit too much. So again, we want to find a balance. And so what I've seen in people doing yoga practice, people doing the moving in their bodies, when they start to do a deep spinal extension, meaning a back bend, meaning their chest is opening, if that heart center is very closed and locked down, this is going to be such an uncomfortable sensation for them, so much so that they might not even be able to move into the posture. And then again, on the other side, when someone who has a really open heart center, they might go into back bending, so heart opening or spinal extension postures very easily, but they'll have a hard time going into forward folding. They might even have a hard time establishing deep strength inside of themselves. So someone, let's say, who has lost a beloved member of the family, or who has gone through a breakup, or who has suffered any kind of deep grief or trauma, this heart center is going to close down. And all of us have been through some sort of trauma in some time in our life, and we know the heart or the shoulders literally close in on themselves. And this is our bodies, or our energetic bodies, telling us how much that center is closing. So the best thing to do in that circumstance is to drop the shoulders down and pull them back and work on opening the heart center. But this also means humility. So being able to accept love from other people, not just give it away, means also closing yourself down if you're too open. Because when we're too open, we become vulnerable. And as so many of us, I'm sure, have experienced, we give and we give and we give and we get nothing back. And then we become jaded by the world. So having a balanced heart chakra is then being able to know the appropriate means and times to give and receive our love.
Okay.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you remember that you want to add to that?
Nothing off the top of my head. I'm sure I'll think of something later.
I know, me too, for sure. So then we move up to the next center, which is the fifth chakra, which is the Vishuddha chakra. And this is our throat, and this is our center of communication. And this one's a biggie. This one I find a lot of people have a hard time with. So someone whose throat chakra, let's start with the open. Someone who has a very big open center in their throat. These are the people that can talk about anything all the time. And we all have friends like this that they just say whatever without a filter. And it's like, oh, I can't unhear that. Or you're in a really inappropriate situation and they say the exact wrong thing that everyone's thinking, but it's not appropriate to say. That's an indication of a throat chakra that's really big. They can speak their mind, sometimes too much. They never have a problem talking. Sometimes it's hard to get them to stop talking. And then there's the person who has a very closed throat chakra. And this is what we're seeing a lot, is that this is an indication of someone who hasn't been able to speak up for themselves, who hasn't been able to speak their truth. There is an ailment, thyroid dysfunction. People have either hypothyroidism, and what this means, the thyroid gland, which is housed within the throat, is responsible for emitting hormones that regulate through the body. And so when someone has hypothyroidism, this means the thyroid gland is not emitting hormones properly, maybe not even at all, so the body becomes thick and sluggish and tired. We might gain weight very easily. On the flip side, there's hyperthyroidism, where the body's metabolism moves too quickly, and these people might have a hard time putting weight on. They can't slow down. Their heart might be going super quickly. And so there's two sides of the same thing there. So hypothyroidism is connected to someone whose throat chakra, Vishuddha chakra, is closed down. So this might be someone who has gone through their life not being able to express themselves. By the way, if you ever have this kind of dry cough in your throat, my first question when I hear that on myself or with someone else, it's like, what do you want to say that you're not saying? Or really anything that's going on around the mouth. Let's say if you get cold sores, fever blisters around your mouth, that's apparently an indication that there's anger inside of you that's not wanting to get out. You know that lump in your throat that you get when you really want to cry, but it's not an appropriate time to let it out, or as people tell us, and then you get that feeling of the lump in your throat. Well, this is your throat chakra. And this is expression that wants to come out, but doesn't have the means. It doesn't have the ability to come out as it should. So literally there becomes a block there. So this throat chakra, a really good way of balancing it, of course, is through breathing, through meditation. And there are certain postures of dropping the head back and tucking the chin right into the chest. This might even be very uncomfortable for people to first try, but can bring a lot of healing and wellness through it. Moving from the fifth chakra, we move up to the sixth chakra, which is called the Ajna chakra. The word jnana, means wisdom. So this chakra, we say it's the third eye that sees and experiences that which is beyond the world of the five senses. So we've talked about the first five chakra, the Muladhara chakra, which is the root chakra. It's connected to the element earth. Then we have the Swadhisthana chakra, which is the second sacral chakra, which is connected to water, fluidity, movement. We have Manipura, the third chakra, which is associated with the third element, fire, transformation. You can also think light or clarity. And then you have the fourth chakra, which is air. So Anahata chakra, the heart chakra, the process of air. And then you have the throat, which is the fifth, the Vishuddha, which is the element of space, the container in which all the four elements exist. So when you move to the sixth chakra, it becomes a little bit loaded there because we've moved beyond the world of the five senses and we've come into the world that's beyond the world of the five senses. So this is called the psychic center of awareness. So someone who has a really big sixth chakra, a really big Ajna chakra, we can think of these people as maybe a little bit too, what we would say, out there. So we could say these people are always thinking about esoteric philosophy. Maybe they start seeing things, maybe they start experiencing things that start to affect their ability to remain in the world.
Would this be, for instance, like schizophrenia or something like that?
So here, kind of. So this is a little bit controversial, and I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. But for me, mental illness is not necessarily cannot be categorized in such a way. We don't know what's happening in the minds of those people. And unfortunately, a lot of things like schizophrenia, we give them a pill and we say, okay, here you go. Now you're under control. But a lot of times what could be happening with schizophrenia is that these people are experiencing something outside of the world of the five senses that the medical profession doesn't necessarily recognize as being real. So we've all seen these shows about paranormal activities, or maybe we've been to psychics, or maybe we read tarot cards, or maybe we've had some sort of experience with the esoteric world. Well, when we start to close this center down, be it through medication, be it through fluoride in our water, be it through numbing ourselves with video games and television and all of these sort of menial things, then we lose the ability to have that connection with a higher world. So a lot of times what happens in mental illness is that there's a confusion because the world is telling us, no, it's this way. You have to believe this. You have to think this way. And if you think outside of this way, then something's wrong with you. But then there's a voice deep inside of us that's saying, but no, this doesn't seem right. And so there becomes a deep confusion inside of us. And if we don't have the information, the tools, and support available, then remember the word disease, dis-ease, we become out of ease, we become no longer relaxed, we become in a state of panic. And this is where the problem starts to come.
Okay.
So this sixth chakra is all about, like I said, our ability to connect with the world outside of us, with the world outside of the parameters of normal society. So all of these things that are starting to become a little bit more popular or a little bit more into our scope of awareness, now we're starting to see that they're not so crazy. We're starting to open this function inside of ourselves, but like all the other chakras, it needs to be balanced because we still need to go to work. We still need to make money. We still need to feed ourselves. We still need to have a roof over our head. So we still need to operate in the world. So if we can balance ourselves out, that means that we can start to come in contact with these higher psychic awarenesses, but at the same time put them in a way that we can be balanced and still maintain our position in the world. Does that make sense?
It does. One question I guess I have for you is where is the balance in the sense of, I assume, in your opinion, like most standard American or North Americans, I guess I should say, since you're up in Canada, aren't balanced because they don't have enough of that spirituality. I guess my question is like, where is the balance? Like, what if someone that had a very closed sixth chakra were to slightly open it up? What are some examples of the things that they would feel, see, experience, I guess?
So coincidences, synchronicities. These are the first sort of keys that people start to experience. Like you think about your friend and then 2 minutes later your friend calls you. It's like, how did that happen? Or two people experience the same thing who are on different side of the world who don't speak to each other about anything. Or you read something in a book and all of a sudden you see it right there in front of you. Or you start to, what a lot of people say is manifest. You thought about something and all of a sudden it happened. So as we start to become a little bit more aware of our own power as a human being, we start to connect with the more esoteric things. We start to connect with our ability to, what we would only see the first thing that comes to my mind is things like Star Trek, like things that we would see only like aliens doing, or in sci-fi movies, or that we see that they're really not that strange, that they're really not that much out of our scope. So again, we see these synchronicities, we see these coincidences that happen for us, we see doors opening for us. And this is the sort of thing that when we start living in line with what actually matters to us, we feel better in ourselves. So, for example, mental disorders like autism. Autism is huge nowadays, especially there are so many children that are being born into this world that are carrying this thing of autism around with them. But what we're seeing is that even though they might not have the ability to work in society that we think is appropriate, they're highly intelligent. They're talking to beings that we think are imaginary, but we don't know they're imaginary. What we see through the human eye is only 1/10 of what's actually going on and what we could actually perceive with our energetic being. So when we start to open up the function of this third eye, we start to open up to the abilities or the awarenesses of what is actually happening in the world. It's also said that we only use 10% of our brain. So what's the other 90% doing? And as we start to go, let's say, into meditation or into higher states of awareness, then we start to work different parts of our brain. This third eye starts to open.
Okay.
Is that too hippy-dippy, or does that make a little bit sense?
It's interesting. There's definitely there's parts of everything where it's a little out there for me, but then there's other parts where I'm like, that are probably a little too out there for most people that I'm digging, I'm loving.
See, the thing is with all of this stuff is that there's a famous line in an authoritative text that says, until all of this information becomes personal experience, it remains nothing but the nonsensical babblings of a madman. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, it's like I can explain all of this stuff till I'm blue in the face, but the whole reason of explaining it is that if you've ever had this sort of thought, if you've ever had this experience, if you've had this thing where it's like, no, I'm crazy. You're not crazy. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility there.
Absolutely. And something I will say, I don't talk about this a lot, but I mean, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if you were to have said any of this to me, I was totally closed off, totally 100% logical, rational. I don't mean to say that this is not rational, but I did have like experiences of my own where I'm like, whoa, things are a little bit different. Like I had experiences outside of the norm, I guess I'll say, to make a very long story very short. And it started to make me a little bit more open to, okay, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe even the way science sees things now isn't everything. And I'm not saying that this stuff is stuff that science could never figure out, but it's something that is too far out there for scientists to even consider at this current stage, if that makes sense.
Well, actually, there's a lot of research that's now being done to try to understand how these esoteric principles are actually working, and that they're not just something that's made up, that they're not just something that's airy-fairy, that's really out there, that's actually something to be considered. Because we're seeing, for example, if somebody's having an ailment so each of the chakras is also associated with different glands in their body. So someone who has this endocrine gland dysfunction, someone who's not creating enough fight or flight hormone inside of them, let's say something like that, then we can start to work on this Manipura chakra. We can work on the third chakra to be able to build up these reserves, both through restoration, so giving enough rest and relaxation, but also strengthening. So we know when to exert our energy and when to pull back. And that comes from confidence and knowing when to assert yourself. Mm-hmm. So just to bring it all together before I get too carried away, the last chakra, the last energy center, is on the crown of the head. And this is called the Sahasrara chakra. And this means the 1,000-petaled lotus. So on the top of the head, we have this idea of this 1,000-petaled flower that sits open. Now, if you've ever seen a lotus in real life, a lotus, it sits in the mud, and when the sun comes out, the lotus opens and becomes this beautiful flower. And then when the sun goes away, the lotus closes. Now, the Sahasrara chakra, if it's in balance, does the same thing. And the whole point and purpose of this chakra is you can call it our connection with divinity. So, as I said before, it doesn't matter what your idea of divinity is. This is our connection to it. So someone who has a Sahasrara chakra that's too open, that's open all the time, this is our idea of someone who is really out there, who, as my dear family members would call, a space cadet, someone who really can't connect with the world around them. I mean, this is someone, if you've ever been in an experience with someone who's taken a lot of psychedelic drugs, for example, how they're talking about these really crazy sort of experiences that they've had, or things that they're feeling, So these people, they don't have the grounding faculty. They're up in the stars. And what they're experiencing, it's not that it's not real, but it's not transferable to the material world. And now someone who has a Sahasrara chakra that's always closed, so again, that lotus flower that's always closed, these are the people that have absolutely no belief or understanding of anything of the spiritual world. These are the people that think and believe that this physical body is just a group of bacteria that are working together, and when this group of bacteria expires, then that's it. There's nothing else that's happening. So both are not necessarily going to give us any purpose, any meaning. So by opening and closing this Sahasrara chakra, hopefully consciously, we're learning how to get the best out of both worlds. We know how to be in our bodies. We know how to go to work. We know how to make money. We know how to enjoy the sensations and the pleasures of life. We have friends around us, good people surrounding us, and we know how to assert ourselves. We know how to give. We know how to receive love. We can communicate easily and effortlessly. We can be interested in higher principles, higher ideals. But then also, when it's appropriate, we can connect to higher places, higher spirituality.
That's awesome. Do you have time? I have a couple rapid fire questions that you can take your time with them. Just a couple more quick questions.
Yeah, please.
All right. So the first question, I guess, anything else on chakras before we move on to these questions?
I mean, I could talk about these for years.
A lot of the questions will kind of probably bring it back around. So the first question I really have for you is, what are your religious and spiritual beliefs? Like, what is God to you, I guess?
Right. So for me, I don't believe in organized religion. I think that organized religion is just a perpetuation of segregation. I think that every religion at its core is trying to establish the same thing. Treat your neighbor nicely. Mm-hmm. Don't kill. Have compassion. Be a good person. This is at the basic foundation. And this is exactly the basic foundation of the yamas and the niyamas, ahimsa, nonviolence, compassion, and kindness. So for me, I think that organized religion, sure, of course, it has its own place and it has a great benefit to so many people. But for me, in my own personal experience, any kind of dogma or anybody telling me you need to believe this, you can't believe this, I immediately run in the other direction. But because I was lucky enough to study religious beliefs in university, I saw many different religions, and I saw how all these different religions sort of evolved from one another. And like I said, they're all the same thing. They're all just trying to allow us to get a connection to some sort of higher power, and whatever you want to call that higher power. And so for me and my own personal belief, because I grew up in a very scientific household, religion was just something that we did on the holidays. Once a year we would go to church or to temple. And we were grown up in this way of like, okay, well, evolution is a real thing. But then there was always something in my mind of, well, evolution, yeah, that seems like a really great idea, but who started the Big Bang? How did it actually come to be? So for me, what I found in my own exploration and my own journey of looking through consciousness, looking at yoga, is that what I call God or Great Spirit or the universe is the force that started the Big Bang, is the principle of evolution, is the force that keeps this change, this pulsation of life force going forward. So you can experience it through Catholicism, through Judaism, through Protestantism, through Islam, through Hindu religions, through Buddhism. It's all the same thing. It's all coming back to the principle of what lies beyond our physical reality.
Okay. The next question I have for you, and I don't, maybe you don't have an answer for this, or actually, let me just get your thoughts on the meaning of life. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, a very big question.
What's the meaning of life?
I don't expect that necessarily this is the definitive answer, but I think everyone has their own opinions, so or thoughts on it. I'd love to hear yours.
My meaning of life is for consciousness to experience itself through the human. So the human body, like if we let's take the explanation of evolution here. 14 billion years ago or so, and this is if you're a scientific mind, and I'm sorry out there if you don't believe this, but this is my belief, so we're all entitled. So 14 billion years ago, something came out of nothing. And it's taken us this long to, at least on the planet Earth, to be able to have the human being. A single-celled organism then evolved into a multi-celled organism that maybe evolved into plant life, that maybe evolved into fish, that maybe evolved into amphibian, half in the water, half on land, and then so far and so forth. So then we come to Homo erectus, and coming back to the chakra system. The difference of the Homo erectus, the human, versus all the other animals is that our spine is upright. And if we look at the chakra system, so we have the Muladhara chakra, which is the earth principle that connects us down to this reality here and now. But then we also have the Sahasrara chakra, the crown chakra, which is our ability to access this sort of God consciousness or spirit. So by having the spine in this upright position, it's allowing that energy to travel upwards, which is allowing this union of, we can say, heaven and earth. So for me, the whole reason that we're here is to be able to experience what the universe wanted through the whole stage of evolution. So before there was anything, before there was the Big Bang, there was, let's say, well, what Hindu philosophy calls, or yoga philosophy calls, Purusha, the underlying witness. The underlying witness that's without a name, without a form, without any kind of tactile qualities, then played with what's called Prakriti, creative energy, and then created the universe. And so as the human, we're like the antennae. We're like the last little bit of this whole project so that consciousness can come back to itself. So this is my esoteric meaning of life, but the more, let's say, realistic meaning of life is to love one another, is to learn how to become a unit, learn how to become a community, learn how to share, learn how to grow, and learn how to expand, learn how to live without fear, without needs, without too much selfish desire, and learn how to heal ourselves, heal the world, and heal the whole solar system.
Okay. I love it. I don't know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
I don't know if, or maybe Tolle sometimes I hear him called. Anyways, I think I watched a YouTube video where he was asked that same question, same kind of response of like, that's a really big question, but his answer was very similar, I believe.
That's pretty cool. All right.
Yeah. So another, I'm trying to think, another question for you. You talked earlier about like experiencing a lot of this stuff firsthand. Is there any stories that you can tell me and the audience that, I mean, obviously it might not be able to convince everyone, but something that you experienced that kind of helped you take a step forward into believing some of the more quote unquote out there stuff, I guess?
Well, there's been a lot. One story that immediately came to my mind was it was a few years ago, I went to the Philippines and I had a beautiful opportunity to do a work trade at a retreat there. And there was a group of people that told us, oh, you go up to the top of the mountain at night and you can see beings, you can see light. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay, we'll see what happens. So a friend and I go up, and there was nobody else at the retreat at that time. It was just he and I. Everyone else had left. And so we go to the top of the mountain and we're up there and we're watching, just having a chat. And then all of a sudden it looks like someone's walking towards us with a flashlight. And we're seeing this and we're both looking at each other like, okay, who could that be? There's nobody else here. We're in the middle of the jungle. And then we're saying, okay, well, maybe maybe somebody came up. And then we look to see where the flashlight light, or so we think, is coming from. And it's coming from the side of the mountain. There's no possible way anybody could be walking there. So we both start freaking out a little bit, but we remain calm. And then all of a sudden, another light comes, and then another light comes, and another light comes. And before we know it, there's about 20 lights that are starting to come past us. Just as this is happening, there's wind that starts to pick up, there's thundering and lightning that comes, and both of us kind of want to stay to see it out. But as this storm is coming, we look at each other and like, all right, let's go. So even that example started to show me like, okay, maybe there's something out there that I don't necessarily know. But on a very practical and tangible level, I told you at the beginning of this talk that, I was diagnosed with the big, and what people call the big C. But for me, that was like, no way, no how, just changing the thought pattern, changing the belief system, and changing how I decided to put myself out in the world, healed my body, healed my mind more than anything else.
Those are both great stories. Obviously, the second one's very deep. A question on the first one, is this a place that anyone could go to?
Yeah, actually, it's called, I'm not sure if that one is still existing, but they have a place in the Philippines in an island called Palawan. It's called Bahay Kalipay. They do raw food. And they do something called inner dance. And again, this was one of those things when I first went, I was very skeptical. And the leader of the place, he said, just have an open mind, Elise. And I was like, yeah, whatever, you hippies. And so I'm watching the thing happen and I'm seeing people. And the whole thing is that you dance however your body wants to move. If you want to stand up and dance, you can do that. If you want to sit down and meditate, you can do that. But there's music played. And the music that's being played is sort of used to elicit a response inside of you. And it wasn't long before I was up and I was dancing, and then, then all of these emotions were starting to come up inside of me, and I thought, okay, what's going on, But then I kind of let go into the process, and I saw that this was a beautiful way to look at and heal so many things that had been going on in my life thus far. So this is something that they do at that retreat as well.
What was the name of the retreat?
Bahay, Bahay, Kalipay, Kalipay, I believe.
Awesome. All right. I have just two more questions for you. The first is a little bit more on the practical side, I'll say practical side of things. What does your daily routine look like from the time you wake up till the time you go to bed? And you can kind of condense it down. I'm just curious. Yeah.
It's crazy. So I wake up at 4 a.m.
Okay.
And I'm very lucky that I get to live in a tropical island. I live in the island Phangan in the Gulf of Thailand. So I wake up at 4. I make myself a glass of lemon water and then a coffee. And then I kind of wake myself up. I don't like the morning so much, so it takes me a little while. Sometimes I'll write, sometimes I'll stretch just to be able to get myself awake. And then I take a shower, I do my meditation practice, and then I do my asana practice, my physical yoga practice. And then I leave my house. That takes me about from 4 to quarter to 7. That's all done. And then I drive to work. I teach from about 7 to 9, and then a little break. And then I teach philosophy in the afternoon, and then meditation. And then through the rest of the day, maybe I also do a technique called past life regression therapy, also called transsomatic dialogue therapy. So this is a way of looking into people's subconscious mind and being able to heal old wounds that have been there. So it's a technique that I learned in India, where we can see visions, or you can go back into your childhood, or sometimes even people go into their past lives to be able to, like I said, heal deep things that are ailing them in their minds. And then teach meditation in the evening, come home, meditate myself, pet my cat, maybe watch a few things on YouTube, and go to bed.
Nice. And during your free time, what do you do for fun? Sounds like there's a lot of work and yoga involved.
I go to the beach. I love to cook. I cook a lot of food on my evenings off. Sometimes I go dancing. Dancing for me is the most cathartic thing that I can do. To close your eyes and just dance everything out is, for me, is one of my most favorite things. I also am lucky enough to take a dance class throughout the week. Sometimes I read. I like to write, so just anything to kind of enjoy my time there.
Gotcha. And sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been to a lot of yoga retreats throughout the world. Is there like 3 or 4 that you'd highly recommend the listeners, if they have the ability to go check out?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a shameless plug, but
Yeah.
obviously the one that I'm currently working is called the Yoga Retreat. It's on Phangan, Thailand, which is a beautiful little piece of paradise. And this is... So we do week-long retreats. You can do 1 week, 2 week, or 1 month retreats. We do Ashtanga yoga. We do Hatha yoga. We talk about all sorts of philosophy and different healing modalities. There was this retreat, Bahay Kalipay, that it was in the Philippines. There was also another retreat, also in the Philippines, in a place called Boracay, which some of you might be familiar with. It's called Mandala Spa. That was a beautiful place with a beautiful chalet to go to. And then for me, where I do all of my studies is in Mysore in India. And if you ever get the chance, if you have not gone to India already, I highly, highly suggest it. There are so many wonderful places to go, from the north to the south. Rishikesh is a beautiful place to go. There's lots of spirituality there. Just be careful of hustlers. Mm-hmm. And if you want a little bit more of a Western sort of Indian idea, there's a beautiful place called Varkala in the south of India, in the province of Kerala, and they have wonderful yoga retreats, beautiful beaches, and you can wear shorts there. So there's a plus.
Is there any ones that you've been to in North America or maybe South America that you're like, oh, this was a really good one as well?
I've never been to South America, which is unfortunate. And actually in Canada and the US, I've never had the opportunity to be in a retreat, but I have practiced with many wonderful Ashtanga yoga teachers.
Okay. All right. Last question for you. In this, I feel like this whole episode's been answering this question, but any general recommendations for people in their 20s? Anything that you wish you would have known earlier, or that you just wish to share with everybody listening?
I say to live your life how you see fit. That when we are in school, when we're in our early 20s, when we are trying to make it in the world and trying to make a buck, sometimes we get confused, and sometimes we lose our personal values or our personal beliefs because of what other people think or what we think other people think. And if somebody could have told me or shown me what I was going to be doing now in my life, I might not ever believe them, but I would have taken the advice of don't worry, just follow what your heart wants to do.
Great advice. Where can people find out more about you?
I have a Facebook page. I have my personal Facebook page, Elise Greenspoon, like a spoon that's green. Please add me, no problem. But I also have a more public page, Greenspoon Yoga. And I post updates, I post where I am, I post where I'm teaching, different informations, things that I write. So if you ever have any questions or comments or concerns, I would love to hear from any and all of you.
And I'll put links to all that, including the yoga retreat in, I don't know how to pronounce it right, Copenhagen, whatever.
It's
close. That's the very gringo way of saying it. I'll put links to all that in the show notes. But thank you, Elise, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Very much. It was great.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.